Welcome to Strongtown's Local Conversation for February. One of the aspects of Strongtowns is an emphasis on the value of higher density locations. And one of the bread and butter exercises is a value per acre analysis. And we're gonna do that for the block we just picked up trash on, which is super exciting. I'm super excited. Yeah, if you've read the Strongtowns book, you know value per acre is one of the things that he talks about in that book. So let's get started. First, why do a value per acre analysis? Well, value per acre is a measure of the land use productivity. It is essentially a cost-benefit analysis that measures the density of value. It's kind of like miles per gallon for your car. And miles per gallon is essentially a cost-benefit analysis where the benefit is the miles. The cost is the gallons of gas because that costs you something. When we talk about land in Richmond, Richmond cannot annex any more land, so land is a finite resource. So that is the cost, which we measure in acres, and the benefit is the value. What do we mean by value? Well, value can mean a lot of different things. I put together this slide to just kind of illustrate that value can be subjective. We can think about on the very bottom, the individual. For the individual, it's the use of the property, it's the profit from the businesses, it's the resale value, the equity, lots of different advantages for the individual. For the neighborhood, value is kind of like the cleanliness, the storefront, orderliness, quietness. You know, the immediate neighbors, that's kind of what they care about is neighborhood character, things like that. For the community, being able to access goods and services, being able to access this library with free resources, that's another form of value. So I live in the community where this is the closest library. So I benefit from this library having books, but I don't live so close that I care quite as much about the cleanliness because I'm not an immediate neighbor. And so that's kind of how things sort of expand onto the community level. On a city level, we can kind of think of like taxes, jobs, the magnetism of having certain brands in our region. These bring value to the city. Taxes very directly. The jobs, the magnetism, the more subjective elements, those are values as well. So keep that in mind. For the focus of this presentation, we are focusing on the assessed value, which is partly improvement value and partly land value. From all the parcels I looked at, the average was 68% being the improvement value. So that's like a building structures. If you pave a parking lot, that is some improvement, so that counts. The land value is kind of the value of the dirt underneath all of that. So that's roughly 32% coming from the land value, 68 from the improvement value. And I'll say total value to mean the combination of these two things.
But who's measuring the value?
Assessed value. Yep, so this is all from the city property website.
But does Richmond already do a land value?
They include the land value in the total value. So this is 1.2% of total value, which includes both improvement and land value, is how they determine the tax. And so they do assess the land and they assess the property. And I did verify these numbers where I looked at what the parcel mapper said each of these parcels is paying in tax, and it is 1.2%. Or another way of thinking of it is $1.20 on every $100 worth of value, right? But because tax revenue is correlated with total value, I won't be showing both for most of this presentation. Which might lead to a question, because we happen to be standing in a library right now. What about property tax exemptions? So the two parcels that are tax exempt are the library and then across the street, the church building. Not all the church property. The church owns a couple of vacant lots next door. Those are not tax exempt, but the property that the church building itself is on is also property tax exempt. So 25th Street. Everyone here got to see firsthand what it kind of looks like. It's a bit of a mixed use corridor. The analysis area is 900 feet from Fairmount, which is where this roundabout is, down to Venable, where the traffic light is. This area in the census has about 7.1 thousand people per square mile. And that road that we were on has like a peak daily traffic of around 4,000 vehicles, or I think average daily traffic. So a busy part of town, but not terribly busy. It has a number of things on it. It has a church, which we saw, a library that we're in right now. It's got retail. Ocean Grocery is an example of that. That's at the end of the block. And then it's got parking. And that's just generally, and then it has vacant lots as well. So that's just kind of like an overall look at that. I'll start first with getting some things out of the way. There are some properties here that are less valuable for a number of reasons. Vacant lots have land value but no improvement value. So that then means that property owners are paying tax on those vacant lots, but they aren't paying tax on any improvement value. They're just grass. Those represented about 14% by acreage. That was around 5% of the total value. So you can kind of see there's a difference between 14 and 5%, and that's kind of showing how much of a hit this street is taking, this block is taking, because of vacant properties. Similar but different with parking lots. Parking lots do have improvement value because pavement counts as improvement, and those represent 7%. And then they represent about 2% of the block's total value.
So it's 7% of area, but 2% of money.
Yep, exactly.
And 14% of area, but 5% of money.
Exactly.
And then tax exempt, I kind of felt a little bit mixed on including this in here as far as like low value, because it does help the community to have places that don't necessarily pay taxes, such as this place. But that does represent about $19,000 per year that isn't collected in taxes for the library and the church. Roughly a 20% loss. So in total, if you kind of subtract all these percentages, you end up with 63% that are just normal properties with some land value, some improvement value, and they pay their taxes. And that represents 76% of the total value comes from all those normal properties. Questions? Yes.
One of the reasons we have so much like surface parking lots, especially downtown, is because there's basically an incentive to not improve your property because you pay so much less in taxes. And so there's in some ways a penalty to developing in that way. And I say that for valuable lots downtown where I think it would be more important to house people over cars.
What if the city switched the numbers and it was 68% land and 32% property?
When you do that, you basically, who do you want to favor? Do you want to favor, everybody who benefits from underdeveloped property will be really mad. And then also people who park their cars on cheap land will be mad. But then people who have built a lot will be happier.
So where we are currently, the numbers that we're getting for these total value in the assessed value are supposedly intended to be a reflection of the market. So what you're describing would be a departure from the market in terms of deciding value, and instead decide value for what value we care about as a city, which I think there's a lot of benefit to that. But that does then pick sides, picks favorites, picks things that benefit the city. But is a good idea, good thoughts.
And the current situation picks favorites too, we have to keep that in mind.
Exactly.
It's not a
Exactly.
neutral state of
Yep.
being.
Yep.
Thank you. So here's the snapshot. On the left here, we're looking at average value per parcel. So think of this in terms of like you're a property owner on this block. In average, you've got a land value of $94K, $289,000 in terms of improvement value. So for overall, you've got a lot that's worth $326,000. Total value for this block, in land value, this block, which is about 4 acres, is about 4 acres of property here, is almost $3 million. Improvement value is almost $7 million, and then total value is almost $10 million. So that's 9.8. Now here's the juicy part down here. We've got land value per acre. I just kind of threw this in case you were curious. And then total value per acre is the interesting one, which is 2.2 million. So lock that away. We'll be comparing everything to that when I talk about other locations around the city. Now, I picked a street in West End. I knew you'd know where this was. I am not picking on the people who live on this block. I'm not picking on the development. I am picking on the development pattern, but I am trying to do so a little bit judiciously. I think when we get into the end of it, I'll have a little bit of nuance and hopefully not sound like I'm dunking on these people. In order to get 4 acres worth of properties, I had 6 properties, which means I'm just looking on this side of the street so that I could do about the same amount of street pavement, about 900 feet. Nearby population density, 1.5 K per square mile, so that's like a seventh of what we're looking at for this area. Looked at like the nearest grocery. They do have a Trader Joe's near there. Love Trader Joe's, but that's about 2.3 miles. So definitely less dense, and we are comparing how those things line up. Anyone noticing some smaller numbers already? So we're looking at these numbers being larger. So once again, this is your average property owner. This is every single lot had the exact same land value of 121K. The average improvement value averaged around that amount, and then it's roughly around 500,000. So your average person, and once again, this is tied to taxes as well. So your average person has more value to their name in this area of town, as well as they pay more taxes per person. Now, land total value for the block. All of those numbers are down. If you remember, this was about 10 million for 25th Street. And then because all of this is down and I picked around the same amount of acreage, that means these numbers are also down. How much down? About 2/3 less valuable. So roughly a third of the value per acre. That was around 2.2 million for 25th Street, and it's roughly 741,000 for this block. So let's compare. Decided with this analysis that I would zoom in on residential to residential, getting it a little bit more apples to apples. On the 25th Street block, we've got these 2 houses that I think are completely vacant, but we're going to do a comparison to kind of show how even these 2 properties in their current state look a bit different. So total values for the different locations on Waynfleet Drive. We got some with more. This, once again, land value was consistent across all of them, so the increase is because of improvement value. These are larger and smaller houses. Anyone ready for a guess? These are smaller. So the 2 locations on 25th Street are smaller, which is kind of, I don't know, it's kind of good because they're kind of not in the best shape. But when we do the comparison value per acre, less valuable overall, but because they're on the smaller parcel side, this is what we're looking at right here. So roughly we're looking at on a per acre basis of the peak one being about 1 million, and then these 2 both being about 5 million. So once again, this is a total value divided by acreage showing how land use efficient this block is. These 2 people are paying individually less in taxes, but their impact to the amount of miles per gallon that we as a city get out of that land is much higher. They're getting much more value per acre. Stony Creek Fashion Park. So why did I choose this? I was in this side of town and I thought, well, there's a lot of commercial space on 25th Street. It's a little bit of apples to oranges to compare commercial to residential. So I might as well pick something that is close by that's residential. And I'm just curious. I was just curious. I was like, this is a big, large mall. It's a valuable place, right? Like, surely. Here's our value snapshot again. Average value per parcel is no longer relevant because all of this is just one big mall. The different parcels are just kind of splitting up the parking lot from the retail space. So here's what we're looking at. We're looking at 35.2 million. So if you can remember, that same number for 25th Street was around 10 million. It is overall like big mall worth a lot. But all of these numbers are lower because I think it's about 10 acres or maybe more than that. So it's quite a bit larger. So once again, showing kind of the value per acre being this measure of land use efficiency. 25th Street, with all of its problems, with all of its vacant lots, is still beating out the Fashion Mall by land use efficiency. 40% less valuable per acre. As well as, don't forget, Virginia Center Commons. So from 2003 to 2012, that was a mall that's in Henrico. went from 154 million down to 71 million, down to 28.5, down to 15.8. So this number here is only dependent on Stony Point Fashion Mall being in business, being successful, being a good, valuable mall that people care about and want to visit. The moment that it starts declining in value, we'll probably see this even go further down. In summary, what we're looking at, 741K was for Waynfleet Drive, 1.3 million was for Stony Point, and 25th Street, 2.2 million value per acre. I wanted to come back to tax, given that this block does have some tax exempt, as well as like tax is one of the ways that this is contributing to like the larger city. Tax cost per acre, 8.9 in Waynfleet, 16,000 in Stony Point. Does anyone want to wager that 25th Street is lower for all its tax exemption? Nope, it's higher. So 23K per acre for this block. So value per acre and tax value per acre correlated and working well. So what do we do with this information? Is all of this presentation just to say high density good, low density bad, dunking on Waynfleet Drive and saying that 25th Street is better even though it's got vacant lots? I don't think so. Even though we're doing all this math to show the value per acre, we do also have to set up a separate argument to say a high value per acre is beneficial to our city. And that way that we're covering all our bases and we're not just saying, oh, look at numbers go up good, numbers go down bad. We're not trying to do a magic show here. We are saying that a high value per acre does have a benefit to our city. And so I will kind of defend that, bringing back my chart that I introduced in the beginning. When we consider high value per acre versus low value per acre, consider how it impacts all these other subjective forms of value, right? So on a city level, starting up there, the amount of taxes that we get per land being a limited finite resource because Richmond cannot annex any more land, this is great. High value per acre is great for this level. A high value per acre does give goods and services in a very convenient location. This is, if you have a grocery store here, right, which we do have at the end of the block, lots more people have an easier time accessing it. But if we as a region just value goods and services existing in our region, we don't necessarily value the convenience of location, so we might not necessarily value the high value per acre areas of our city. That's a separate subjective judgment that we have to work on as a city. The point I'm kind of getting at is that we can have winners at different games, and we as a city need to value the higher density game. When we look at value per parcel, Waynfleet is the clear winner. So that's individual people having the most value to their name and individual people having the most taxes per person. If this is what we as a city care about, then Waynfleet Drive is an example of a good thing. If we care about total value of all the places we looked at, Stony Point is a great thing. Lots of great overall value, more overall taxes for the region, regional access to name brands and jobs. But if we care about the game of value per acre, 25th Street doesn't win at these two games. But this is an efficiency metric. It's showing miles per gallon. 25th Street has better value per acre than both. So the implications of that are that by valuing value per acre, we have better land use, better resiliency, lower cost per person. Yes, Ryan?
How might we change from value per parcel to value per acre?
But you need to know the value per acre, but you also need to know the cost per
Right.
parcel.
Right.
How do you figure out how much does it cost the city to maintain my street, to maintain my water line, my power lines, all
Yeah.
of that infrastructure? What does my house cost compared to what I actually pay in taxes?
I mean, let's say that to run the city services, it costs $10,000 all of a sudden.
Exactly.
And so that means that Waynfleet, and this is a proxy for so much of development in North America, all of a sudden Waynfleet is not covering its own burden.
Exactly.
And so that means that the disinvested, in some places blighted 25th Street, which is struggling, is actually subsidizing suburban development, and that is the problem. This is a every suburb ever problem.
Yeah.
What Chesterfield can do is they can just keep building more, and so the cash flow stays high, but
That's the
the
Ponzi
maintenance
scheme.
over time just cascades. But that's tomorrow's problem.
That's the Ponzi scheme.
We did that. Okay, so that leads to this final slide that I have as far as information goes, that I kind of wanted to further emphasize this idea that value is not quite the same thing as public perception. It is not quite the same as how we appreciate these properties. So while 25th Street block has higher value per acre, I don't know that it gets better appreciation per acre overall, you know. I think that public perception is a huge player in that. And if we shift public perception to caring more about the value per acre game that we as a city are in, then we create more demand for the higher value per acre places. And I use the term appreciation very selectively because it's not just about paying more for the properties out on this block. It's also about what we do to take care of these blocks, such as picking up trash. Good job, everyone. We're part of the solution. So I kind of made this a little bit of an equation. Like, there is inherent value to low density. There's inherent value to medium density. But the low density, it has certain value that has to do with scarcity, exclusivity, high wealth, high cost per person. Medium density has certain benefits in terms of land efficiency, scalable, walkable, distributed costs, lower taxes per person. And we follow these things over and we add to that value a certain appreciation for these blocks for what it is that they provide. This one kind of becomes more of a high cost of living to match the luxury status. If we value the scarcity of low density, then we make housing very expensive. Because that's naturally the progression of that. When we appreciate and we do upkeep and cleanliness on blocks like this, we are lessening the downsides of density, and we're then allowing these places to flourish, encouraging community growth, economies of scale, and prosperity builds up everyone on the block versus the individual luxury in the low density environment where prosperity is more or less hoarded, which is, once again, I'm using a little bit of negative language here, but I do want to emphasize the nuance of if we in America care about this, this is a good thing. If we in America care about this, then that's a bad thing, and this is a good thing. And those are kind of two different cultural selectors that we as a society either care about one or we care about the other, and that kind of bears out in what we as a city do, what we as a city care about. So that concludes this presentation with a final quote that is from Strong Towns. Land is the base resource from which community prosperity is built and sustained. It must not be squandered. Thank you very much.